25 useless car features that disappeared for a reason. Here's the thing about the car industry, it never stops experimenting, but sometimes engineers cooked up features so pointless or so overcomplicated that the market just rejected them. And honestly, the market was right. Today we are looking at 25 car features that disappeared not because they were banned, but because they genuinely did not deserve to survive. Some will make you laugh, some will make you cringe, and a few will make you wonder how they ever got approved in the first place. Stick around for number 7 because it is the one feature that a car company spent millions developing, let real people test drive, and then quietly destroyed most of the evidence. Let's get into it. Number 25, vent windows, the wing window. You have seen them in old photos. That tiny triangular piece of glass in the front corner of the door that you could pivot open to funnel air into the cabin. In the days before proper air conditioning, they were genuinely clever. Angle it right and you would get a direct stream of fresh air at 60 miles per hour. The moment air conditioning became standard, vent windows became completely redundant. They added ceiling complexity, created wind noise, were a common leak point, and hurt aerodynamics. Engineers looked at them and saw a list of problems with no remaining upside. They were gone by the late 1980s. Not a single driver complained for long. Number 24, floor-mounted high beam switch. This one sounds insane to modern drivers. For decades, you switched between low beams and high beams by pressing a button on the floor with your left foot right next to the clutch pedal in the dark while driving. It worked technically, but it required moving your foot off a critical pedal and hoping you hit the right thing. Column-mounted stocks replaced it in the 1970s and made the whole process instant and effortless. The floor switch disappeared and driving got a little less like operating machinery. Number 23, opera windows and landau roofs. Few things screamed the 1970s American luxury louder than a tiny, oval rear side window and a fake vinyl convertible roof stretched over a car that was very much not a convertible. The look was meant to evoke classic coach building. In practice, it evokes something else entirely. The vinyl roofs trapped moisture that quietly rotted the metal beneath for years. The opera windows were too small for meaningful visibility. Both features added weight with zero functional benefit. As the decade's aesthetic aged, and it aged fast, these styling flourishes went with it. Nobody fought to bring them back. Number 22, column shift manuals known as 3 on the tree. Put the gear shifter on the steering column, free up the floor, let 3 people sit across the front bench. On paper, efficient. In practice, miserable. Column shifters were vague, mechanically imprecise, and required long, sloppy throws between gears. You never quite knew if you had found third or accidentally hit first. Floor-mounted shifters gave direct, satisfying feedback. The moment cars moved away from bench seats, the column shifter became a relic. It lingered in trucks and vans longer than it should have, but eventually even they gave it up. Before fuel injection, cold starting a car was a ritual. Pull out the choke knob to richen the fuel mixture for startup, then remember to push it back in once the engine warmed up. If you forgot, you would flood the engine and damage your catalytic converter. Electronic fuel injection automated all of this and did it better, measuring temperature, adjusting the mixture in real time, and optimizing every cold start without any driver input. The choke knob did not vanish because cars got worse. It vanished because cars got smarter. Number 20, power antennas rising from the fender. There was something undeniably satisfying about watching a motorized antenna extend from the fender when you turned the radio on. For about 30 seconds, then you lived with it for a few years. These masts bent in car washes, frozen winter, and snapped in strong winds. The motor was a constant maintenance headache. When they failed in the extended position, you had a slightly embarrassing metal stick permanently attached to your car. Hidden glass antennas and shark fin modules made the whole system unnecessary. The motorized fender antenna became exactly what it deserved to be, a punchline. Chrysler's Highway Hi-Fi from the mid-1950s sounds incredible in concept. A record player in your dashboard, music on the road before tapes, or FM radio. Visionary, right? Wrong. Records skipped on anything but glassy, smooth roads. They required a proprietary format that played at 16 2/3 RPM, so your existing record collection was useless. Summer heat warped them. The mechanism broke constantly. Better car radios and 8-track tapes made the concept irrelevant within a few years. Chrysler pulled it after 2 years. The hi-fi part was aspirational. The highway part was the problem. 18. In-dash compact disc changers. For a brief moment in the 1990s, the in-dash multi-disc compact disc changer felt like the pinnacle of automotive audio. You could load 6 compact discs, forget about them, and cycle through hours of music without touching anything. Then the MP3 format arrived, then the USB port, then Bluetooth streaming. Suddenly, a bulky unit that held exactly 6 discs, and that would jam if the road got rough, looked absurd next to a phone holding your entire music library. The changer did not evolve. It became obsolete almost overnight. 17. Fender-mounted turn signal repeaters. Some cars from the 1960s and the 1970s had indicator lamps mounted on top of the front fenders, a small extra signal showing which way you were turning. The idea had merit when mirrors were small and sight lines were limited. As exterior mirrors grew larger and integrated indicator repeaters, and as LED technology made mirror-mounted lights standard, the Fender repeaters became redundant hardware. They added extra wiring, extra failure points, extra things to scratch in a parking lot, quietly phased out, quietly unmissed. 16. Keyed ignition on the steering column. For most of the 20th century, you unlocked the steering column and started the car with the same small metal key. It felt secure because it was complicated. In reality, a determined thief could defeat most column locks in under a minute with basic tools. Keyless entry and push-button start replaced it entirely, offering smarter proximity detection, encrypted communication, and no mechanical wear on an ignition barrel. The column key wasn't retired because drivers loved it. It was retired because the alternatives were so obviously superior that loyalty made no sense. Number 15. Cassette decks. For 2 decades, the cassette deck was the heart of in-car audio. Mixtapes, albums on tape, rewinding with a pencil to save battery. It was a ritual. Then, in what felt like 18 months, it became completely embarrassing. Compact disc quality was noticeably better. Then came MP3 players, then phones. The cassette didn't just lose, it lost comprehensively. The last factory cassette deck in a United States car rolled out in 2010. By then, it had been a decade since most people had bought a tape. It survived through pure inertia, which is maybe the least dignified way for technology to die. Number 14. Rear-facing third-row seats in station wagons. Kids from the 1970s and the 1980s remember these with absurd fondness. They faced backwards in the cargo area, letting kids make faces at drivers behind the car. It was your own private compartment in the family car. What it actually was a thin bench with no headrests, no proper seatbelts, and almost zero crash protection. In a rear-end collision, those passengers absorbed the full impact directly. As safety expectations rose with seatbelt laws and crumple zone requirements, rear-facing wagon seats became impossible to keep. The nostalgia is understandable. The engineering reality was grim. 13. Side draft carburetors and complex carb setups. Triple carburetors, side drafts, progressive linkages. Under the hood of the 1960s and the 1970s performance cars, the fueling system looked like industrial sculpture. Tuners who understood them swore by them. Everyone else swore at them. Carburetors guessed at the fuel mixture, and they guessed wrong constantly. They flooded in cold weather, ran too lean at altitude, and gummed up in storage. Electronic fuel injection measured everything in real time and delivered exactly what was needed every time. The carburetor did not just get replaced, it got outclassed entirely. 3 people across the front, your date sliding over on the way to the drive-in, a simpler time. And then there is the engineering version. There was no center airbag mounting point. There was no proper seatbelt anchor for the middle passenger. Lateral support in corners was terrible. Side impact regulations required structural reinforcement exactly where the bench's center sat. Bucket seats with a center console solved every one of these problems. The bench disappeared from most passenger cars by the early 2000s, and it was sustained mainly by tradition, even though safety data repeatedly failed to justify it. 11. Hood ornaments and sharp exterior mascots. The Rolls-Royce Spirit of Ecstasy, the Jaguar Leaping Cat, the Mercedes three-pointed star, these weren't just logos, they were sculptures. They were also effectively a spike in a pedestrian impact. They were chrome-plated, rigidly mounted, and aimed at whoever the car struck. Pedestrian safety regulations made fixed, protruding hood ornaments effectively illegal in most major markets. Rolls-Royce and Bentley now use retractable designs that sink into the hood on impact. It works, but it is absolutely not the same. Number 10. Manual window cranks in higher-end cars. Manual cranks made complete sense when power windows were expensive and unreliable. You turned a handle and the window went down. There was nothing to fail. The moment power windows became cheap and reliable through the 1980s, keeping manual cranks in anything above an entry-level car became a statement of cheapness. They also created interior hazards because in a side impact, the protruding metal handle could cause serious injuries. Power windows eliminated the protrusion entirely. Manual cranks survive in commercial vehicles and bare-bones-based trims. Everywhere else, they are correctly gone. Number 9. Pop-out windshields. This one sounds like it was designed by someone who thought the solution to glass injuring people was to remove the glass during a crash, which is more or less what they thought. Early engineers designed windshields to eject outward on impact, theorizing it would prevent occupants from being cut. What it actually did was remove roof structural support, increase ejection risk, and expose people to road and debris. Laminated safety glass, which shatters into a spider web and stays bonded to the frame, replace pop-out designs and actually solve the problem. They were retired as soon as anyone looked at the crash data seriously. Number 8. Lap-only seatbelts in the front seat. Here is a feature that sounded like safety, but it was not. Lap belts were better than nothing, but barely. In a frontal collision, your torso kept moving while your hips stopped. The result was seatbelt syndrome, with fractured spines, ruptured organs, and catastrophic abdominal trauma. People survived crashes that should have killed them, arriving at the hospital with devastating injuries caused by the belt itself. The three-point belt, developed by Volvo's Niels Bohlin in 1959 and shared freely with the entire industry, distributed crash forces across the chest, shoulder, and hips simultaneously. The lap-only belt was not just outdated. It was actively causing harm while appearing to offer protection. Its replacement was one of the most consequential safety decisions in automotive history. 7. Chrysler's jet engine cars. In the early 1960s, Chrysler built 55 cars powered by actual jet turbine engines and gave them to ordinary American families to drive for 3 months. The turbine car program was real, ambitious, and by almost every practical measure, a disaster. The engines returned 9 miles per gallon. Pressing the accelerator caused a delay of several seconds before the car moved. Exhaust temperatures were high enough to melt asphalt and scorch roadside grass. The engine made a constant whine, like a large vacuum cleaner. Chrysler destroyed 46 of the 55 cars afterward. It was one of the most expensive proofs of concept in automotive history. It proved the concept should not continue. 6. Automated manual transmissions, early semi-automatics. Take a manual gearbox, remove the clutch pedal, automate the clutch operation. Efficiency without the effort, best of both worlds. What drivers actually got was the worst of both worlds. Clutch engagement was jerky. Upshifts lurched. Downshifts were worse. The systems were slower than a competent manual driver and less smooth than a proper automatic. They existed in that uncomfortable valley between two better things. Modern dual-clutch transmissions eventually solved the problem correctly. Early semi-automatics just made everything more complicated. 5. Pop-up headlights, the Mazda Miata, the Toyota Supra, the Ferrari Testarossa. When the headlights rose from the hood, something happened that no modern car quite replicates. Mechanical theater at its best, but the romance was expensive. Mechanisms added weight, motors wore out, ice jammed them in cold climates. They took time to rise, time during which you had no forward lighting. Then pedestrian safety regulations arrived and rendered them illegal in most markets. The last pop-up headlights left a showroom in 2004. Fixed LED lights replaced them with better output, faster response, and zero drama. Better in every way, just not as cool. Number 4. All-metal dashboards. Open a car from the 1950s and everything in front of you is steel. Chrome switches, painted metal surfaces, hard edges catching the light. It looked extraordinary. It was also, in any significant collision, a wall your face was about to meet. There were no crumple zones, no padding, and no energy-absorbing foam beneath a soft surface layer, just metal and momentum. Head injury statistics from pre-regulation vehicles were alarming. Padded, energy-absorbing dashboards became mandatory, and the entire interior design language of the car changed as a result. Those stunning metal cabins were beautiful in photographs and genuinely dangerous in the real world. 3. Non-collapsible steering columns. In a frontal crash in almost any car built before 1968, the steering column was a steel shaft aimed directly at the driver's chest. When the engine bay compressed, the column went backward into you. It wasn't an oversight, it was simply how cars were built before anyone ran the numbers. Collapsible columns became mandatory after the data became impossible to ignore. Today's columns have multiple engineered collapse points, and they work with airbag timing to decelerate the driver over the longest possible distance. The rigid column wasn't just removed from cars, it became the reason safety regulations exist. Number 2. Ashtrays and built-in cigarette lighters were everywhere. Every car through most of the 20th century came with at least one ashtray and a coil lighter that glowed red hot when you pushed a button. There were multiple ashtrays in larger cars. It was assumed, without question, that you smoked. As smoking rates declined and social acceptance of smoking in enclosed spaces collapsed, these features became liabilities. Lighters became 12-volt power sockets, a genuinely useful conversion. Ashtrays became storage cubbies. Once the majority of buyers did not smoke, and some actively disliked cigarettes, designing smoking infrastructure into a car simply made no commercial sense. The exit was not dramatic, it was just unnecessary, one model year at a time. Lap-only rear seat belts. We have talked about the front seat version, but this story's final chapter belongs in the back. For decades after three-point belts became standard up front, lap-only belts continued in rear seats worldwide, including in the United States, where rear three-point belts were not federally required until 1990. What makes this number one is not just the danger, it is the timeline. The industry knew the lap belt problem, the data existed. Rear passengers were dying in crashes that proper restraints would have survived, and for years the response was essentially, it is good enough. Rear three-point belts are now standard everywhere. Looking back, the delay is difficult to defend. This was not a feature that disappeared because technology moved on. It disappeared because it should never have survived as long as it did. Every feature on this list represents a decision made by real engineers, signed off by real executives, and sold to real people. Some of these were honest experiments that hit the limits of the technology available. Some were styling decisions that prioritized how the car looked over how it worked. And a few were comfort features that simply became irrelevant as something better came along. But here is what they all have in common. They are gone. And the cars that replace them are quieter, safer, more efficient, and more reliable. Progress in the car industry is not always loud. Sometimes it is the slow removal of everything that did not need to be there in the first place. If you like this kind of car feature video, please like and subscribe.